Good afternoon, everyone. This is quite possibly the 12th time I've tried to record and get this posted, so I apologize if there's any mistakes, but this will be the last time I make this recording. On the other hand, I also would like to apologize in advance for my poor technologically yet uninhibited presentation in the form of this week's discussion board. But nevertheless, I would like to tie in what I believe to be pertinent in answering this week's discussion board questions regarding threats to fishery resources. I've learned that growth and development, though two aspects of social ideals and the gateway to what many consider to be the key to economic prosperity and the viability of necessitated resource sustainability, is pertinent, especially in the 21st century. Technological advancements have propelled the human race forward in unimaginable ways. Efforts to stay ahead of economical demands and environmental changes caused by global warming, the proclivities of some federal, state, and local stakeholders have developed ways to increase productivity within the economy by utilizing the resources of the surrounding environment. Dams are some of those resources. Dams are constructed barriers that provide an array of benefits, including irrigation uses, water supply for human consumption, industrial uses, and agricultural uses. But dams can also restrict the natural flow of water, which negatively impacts aquatic and riparian habitats. Restricting the water flow may serve economic welfare purposes, but it can also degrade wildlife habitats and ultimately disrupt an ecosystem. Understandably, another thing that I've learned looking at recovery and restoration projects or programs, the price tag associated with the removal of a dam comes with a heavy economic toll. But the benefits afforded to the ecosystem and the wildlife that depends on those ecosystems, with having the availability of free-flowing water, may be more beneficial to both entities in the long run. This week I chose to do case studies on 3 areas in California. I don't live in California, but California's always been a pretty interesting state to me. I chose the state of California because, unlike any other state in the U.S., California is the most populated and the most polluted. I also chose that region because, unlike any other state in the U.S., California is part of the Ferrell Cell, which, for those of you who don't know, the Ferrell Cell is one large convection system. And because of environmental variables caused by climate change, has been overwhelmingly inundated with wildfires due to non-seasonal drought conditions. And the state has some of the strictest environmental laws than any other state I've ever researched. Another thing I've learned, and the reason why I find California so interesting and why I chose it, is because a lot of the subtle climate changes that we've seen that inevitably impact natural resources can be seen or exhibited in California first. So if you ever watch like the Weather Channel or anything that ties into environmental variables or elements due to climate change or global warming, they're usually coming out of California first. Like some of the first signs are out of California because of their convection system. So the 3 areas that I chose in California is Butte Creek, which is home to the McGowan Dam in Butte County, California. The Holy Jim Creek Dam, located in Orange County, California. And the Milliken Creek Dam, which is located in Napa County, California. They each almost share the exact same species of concern. The species that are of concern are listed as endangered, threatened are the Chinook salmon and the tealhead trout and the Aurora toad. I'm not even going to attempt to say their scientific names, but I put them on the slide, so if you could read them, congratulations. But I've been practicing trying to say the names and it just doesn't come out right. The research that I've done on these dams, why the dams were built, they're all pretty much the same reasons. The dam in Buck County was was originally built for a company who used it as hydro generation to generate power. It was an electric company back in the early 1900s. In that same area, there were other dams that were built mostly by private landowners who were built for agricultural needs. Since then, a lot of those dams have been decommissioned or removed. The Chinook salmon in Buck Creek had been listed and declined. The population size had declined all the way down to a mere 349 spawning adults. But since the removal of the dams in Buck Creek, they have pretty much exploded. The population exploded to over 20,000 now. In the Holy Jim Creek dams, located in Orange County, the steelhead trout is a pretty common species of concern up that way. Just like the Milliken Creek Dam, which also has a steelhead trout, and the Aurora toads are located in both. The steelhead trout, like the Chinook salmon, the populations were declining due to habitat fragmentation, which was caused by the dams and bridges that were there. So basically, infrastructure is what caused them to be cut off from their spawning areas. Like the Chinook salmon, they migrate from the ocean, go upstream, find areas to spawn, and then they leave and go back. But with the dams and bridges that were built in near these creeks, or in these creeks, they've substantially just cut off their path. And since the adults have not been able to spawn, the population of the steelhead and Chinook salmon have decreased. The removal of these dams have helped recover the population sizes and richness. Also, some of the projects or restoration projects included the construction of canals and culverts, which help with the drainage. Some of the problems that the dam or the removal of the dams have caused is it gives way to flooding. So with the construction of canals and culverts and drainage pipes, they have been able to successfully remove some of the dams while still keeping the community and residential areas safe from flooding without hurting the population of salmon and trout and toads. What I've learned and what has been really interesting, that was just a brief summary, but what I've learned and what has been really interesting about these lessons this week is that anthropogenic ideals see a lot of the things in the natural environment as one large resource. And what I've learned about the fishery management practices on a lot of different levels, whether they were a century ago or today, is that there's a lot of poor management practices because people use a lot of aquatic wildlife or ecosystem or resources as resources deemed valuable to the economy. And when they deal with restoration projects or recovery projects, it's almost at the brink of the extinction or the cost of the extinction of a species. By then, it's almost too late. So with poor management practices, I believe that's a major tributary to the decline of a lot of those species that I mentioned earlier. And a lot of those things could be prevented if the management practices of fishery resources was improved with technological advancements that have already taken place.